That's step one, and we're actually really close to the thrift store, so we're walking over there now. Okay, it's early in the morning. I've had my coffee already. I usually have only 1 cup of coffee, so you might see me drinking this. This is Mike's Somalia Marine Corps mug. He's a veteran of Operation Hope in Somalia in the 90s. And I decided I think I'm going to feature my various mug collection because I love to pick up mugs at the thrift. I don't have a huge collection or anything, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to have my various drinks in here. So I just have orange juice at this point. I've already had my 1 cup of coffee, so I've got a little juice for the morning. And we're just going to get going on a what sold video. And I've got some really fun stuff. So this is for April and May, and this is the beginning of me starting to list again. So the first thing was a book, and I started as a bookseller way back like 25 years ago. I love selling books, and I think it's making a bit of a comeback because in-hand books aren't as popular anymore. Even I love to read on an e-reader sometimes, and so I'm hoping to get back into selling books. I have a huge collection of antique and vintage books that I really need to list, in addition to my clothing. So this was called The Original Tongue Holy Bible, Antique American Society, 1886. So that's really quite old. And anything religious or Bible related, I definitely like to pick up or at least look up. That sold for $50, and the buyer was all in for $58.71 once they paid tax. And next was a Barbie doll outfit, just the outfit alone, not the doll. I went and sourced something in the beginning of April. It must have been because, yeah, that sold on April 9th. So it was the very beginning of April. I went and sourced. I just happened to see it. I wasn't even searching, but somebody was selling a vintage Barbie doll box, and I could see that there was clothing in there too. And so they only wanted $20. They tried to get 50. Nobody was biting on it. It was local to me. I drove from, it was on Facebook Marketplace. I drove over, paid $20, and I've made quite a bit from it. So you'll see a lot of this Barbie stuff in here. Not usually my niche, but I have sold Barbies in the past, and they're always fun to do all the research. It's a little mini version of the clothing that I love to sell. So this was 1965, called the Country Club Dance. Now, if the Barbie clothing actually has a Barbie tag, it's definitely going to sell for more than something that's homemade. I've seen the term mommy made for clothes that are, made at home. But this was an actual Barbie with the tag. And when that's the case, they do have some sort of a name. There's some sort of a style name for those clothes. So you can do the research and look that up. There are lots of Barbie research sites, and I'll link a few of those down below that I use. But this was called the Country Club Dance. And they also have numbers, number 1627. It was a white and gold dress. That sold for $50. So boom, I'm already got my money back plus some from that $20. So that was one dress. And the buyer was all in for $55.80. I think I had free shipping on that, which is very, very rare for me to do free shipping. The reason the book didn't have much shipping is you can use media mail, of course. If you're not familiar with media mail, that is for selling books, anything without any advertising in it, and you cannot even put a note in there, technically. So media mail is very inexpensive for those kinds of items. Next is another Barbie outfit. This one was homemade, but it still went for $16.99. And this is a really pretty brocade dress with the shawl and some fur trim. Buyer was all in for $18.18. Next, this cute little mouse brooch. Now, I would tell you, brooch, that I went into my attic. I have a massive death pile, and I have been really working on getting that death pile diminished. And so part of the fun of getting back into reselling has been that I haven't had to pay a lot out for sourcing new stuff. So unlike some people, I know Karen at Lavender Clothesline, she does not have a death pile. She's very proud of that. I actually do have a death pile, and I don't really mind having that. It's come in handy for me whenever I've needed to start upping my business again because I moved from part-time to full-time, so it's not a bad thing. Wait till you see some of these sales stuff. I literally had money sitting up in my storage attic. So this was a little gorgeous little mouse, tiny, tiny, tiny. I don't do a lot of jewelry. Boy, do I wish I knew more about jewelry, but this was just a mid-century novelty, mid-century novelty pin in the shape of a little tiny mouse. It sold for $18.99 and buyer was all in for $24.64, and I got really awesome feedback on it. They loved it just as much as I did. Next, a pair of these also came from my attic. They were just sitting up there all this time, probably for over a year. These are new in the box Talbots. I think I paid, oh, I gotta start talking about what I paid for these, don't I? It's been a while since I did a YouTube. I think I paid $10 for these, and I bought these at a thrift store up in the Thousand Islands region of New York State, up along the St. Lawrence River when we were camping. I love to take a morning off and go thrifting at the local thrift store, which benefits the animal shelter up there, so I love that. I paid $10, but they were brand new in box, beautiful aqua color, probably the right time of year to sell them. They sold for $40. Buyer was all in for $53.64. Next, one of the actual Barbies that was in the Barbie box. This is a vintage 60s Barbie bubble cut brunette. She had her original red swimsuit and her original stand with the original earrings. A lot of times the Barbie ears will turn green from the earrings. Hers were a little bit green, but not terrible. Buyers, collectors do expect that, but you definitely want to disclose that if that's the case. She sold for $40 and the buyer was all in for $50.65. She was a part of that $20 buy. Next, another part of the $20 buy. This was another Barbie outfit, City Sparkler outfit. It came with the dress, with the shoes, and with a little Barbie hanger, and that sold for $34.99. No shipping. It got returned. It was not in, if you lifted up the arm, there were some really big holes under the arms, you know, where you put the doll arms in as a kid, and it pokes through. And because this was like a metallic fabric, it was really difficult to repair, and so that sold twice, got returned twice, and the second time I let the person keep it. I didn't realize that they were unrepairable because of that metallic thread, those metallic threads, and so I sent it to the person, but when they said they wouldn't be able to repair it, I refunded their money and just let them keep it. They were a wash. Next, just a little pair of shoes that happened to be in there, also from the Barbie collection. These were a pair of tennis shoes. They were number 876, official Barbie merchandise, sold for $18.99, $25.93 all in, and they went to an international buyer in Japan through the eBay system, so the shipping wasn't that much for me. Next, also from the attic, just sitting up on a bookshelf, these are some current, C-U-R-R-E-N-T, note cards, which were from like the 80s, I think. These had watermelons on them. I said they were the romance set. That's what they were called. They had a watermelon, bear, and a goose. They sold for $12.99 and the buyer was all in for $17.39. Also got excellent feedback, and the buyer wrote that she loves to collect current items, and so I would say that this is definitely a brand to keep your eye out for if you're looking through the stationery cards and those kinds of things. Next, a pair of Sperry topsiders. I sourced these recently, and I think I paid 50% off of $12.99. They sold for $40.10. I had them on a sale, and the buyer was all in for $54.47. So Sperry's, if they're in good shape, are a good men's brand still to pick up with that kind of preppy look. A lot of times they are boat shoes and things like that. These were leather Oxfords. Next, a puzzle that came from the attic, so who knows how much I paid, but you know, I didn't pay much for a lot of this stuff because a lot of it came from my honey hole, which in my just recent previous video I talk about how that closed and I had to find new places to source, which I have done. But this came from that original honey hole, so I might have paid $1.99 or $2.99 maybe. This was a cool puzzle called Light Fantasy, and it's Springbok, which is a good brand to look for. I believe Springbok was a division of Hallmark, and this was the circular puzzles, which definitely have a following. Sold for $25, buyer was all in for $34.46. Next, another Barbie piece of clothing. This one I have mommy made put in there. I had just learned about that. These were a pair of bell-bottom, it was a bell-bottom jumpsuit mod. So it sold for $12.99 with free shipping. Buyer was all in for $13.99. So not much, but you know, that's okay. Okay, here's a sale that is a bummer because I couldn't find it. So this had been listed a long time ago. It was from the attic. I don't know what I did with it. I'm in the process of moving my inventory both, well, we moved home last year, and we bought property and are building a barn-dominium, which I hope to kind of bring you along on. And somewhere in that move, and it just got lost, and I had to return it, and it was a decent sale. It was a really good sale, actually. It was a framed winter scene crewel embroidery. It sold for $45, and it did get canceled, so I had to cancel it. So that's a ding against my seller account, which, you know, you really don't want to do that. So inventory, keeping track of where everything is really important, and I'm gonna have to be very, very careful when we move to the barn-dominium. But that was a bummer. Next was a long sleeve men's pink Vineyard Vines t-shirt. It was in such excellent condition that I picked it up for $1.99. Vineyard Vines is one of those, you know, you got to be very careful about what you pick up. It's a really oversaturated market, but because it had the nice big whale on it, the condition was amazing. And pink for men is a good color for lots of different things. I know that Mike, when the girls were playing volleyball, oftentimes they would have a breast cancer awareness night, and everybody was encouraged to wear pink in the stands and those kinds of things. And so there are lots of occasions where men are just kind of, they're popping online to buy something pink. So if I see something men's pink, I'll often take a look at it, or at least comp it to see what it is. Sold for 20 bucks, and buyer was on for $26.20. Barbie pajama party outfit, number 1862, so that means it was an official Barbie outfit. That sold for $16.99, free shipping. Next, a long listed. This didn't come from the attic. I just had it listed for a long time. I had it just a little bit too high, so I lowered the price. That's one thing I've been doing, one strategy to kind of get things moving. I'm really trying to just pump out those sales, even at lower prices. So I've always been a long tail seller. I'll let things sit and try to get the price I want. I'm not going to do so much I'm not only going to do long tail, I should say, right now. Partly because of the economy, partly because I'm trying to get my store up and running again across all platforms, eBay, Poshmark, Mercari, a little bit of Depop I'm back into. I used to do Facebook Marketplace. Do you guys do Facebook Marketplace? Let me know. I started to kind of cross-list over there this time out, and you know, I just get so many scams over there that I'm not quite sure. I get a few trickling in sales here and there, and I'm not sure it's worth it to deal with all the scammers. So this had been listed for a long time. I dropped the price significantly. It was an 80s, legit 1980s chevron rainbow stripe with ruching on the sides that you tied with little ties. Love this shirt. I dropped it to $26.99 and it sold. Buyer was on for $33.66. Next, another long-term item that I dropped the price and they sold. Danceco. I love to pick up Danceco. If they're in good condition, you really need to be careful, especially with the clogs. A lot of nurses like to wear them. They're great, but oftentimes they do get pretty worn out, and that's when they get donated. So these were in great condition. They were the Jacinda sandals in a cognac color. Sold for $38.99. Buyer was on for $52.88. These were up in my attic, and I listed them, and they sold very quickly. I have another pair still up in a silver color that haven't sold yet, but those were attic items. Next, a pair of eyelet granny panties, and panties have sold wonderfully for me. Now, I know some of it's for collectors. Some people just like the vintage clothing, but don't sleep on panties, because some of them I think I sold a pair for $152 years ago, a couple of years ago. Luckily, I put it on auction because I never would have priced them that high. I never would have thought to price them that high. But they had a certain gusset in the back, and they got fought over, and it got bid up to $150. Nothing near that for these, but still, these came out of the attic. They were just sitting there in my closet, and they sold for $24. Buyer was all in for $30.51. Next closet item, sitting in the closet. I'm sorry, sitting in the attic. Sitting in the attic. So there's a difference between the items that have been in the closet for a long time, or been in the shop, the eBay shop for a long time, just sitting there where I've dropped the price. There are the items that were in the attic that I've listed finally out of the dead stock. And that's what this was. This was dead stock. This is a jacket by the brand Palace, which I didn't know. I must have looked it up at the thrift store. I don't quite remember, but it's a skateboarding brand and a very popular one. So this was an excellent condition jacket, and it sold for $51.40. Buyer was on for $62.80. So if you see something by Palace, definitely take a second look. Next, some of the clothes from the Barbie lot that I didn't want to sell individually, I just didn't think they would bring more than $10 or so each, I put into a big lot. And so that lot did sell for $19.99. Buyer was all in for $27.14. Next, another piece of stationery item that was from the attic, from my dead stock. What am I saying? What am I saying? Death pile. I'm getting it mixed up with dead stock. Okay, my death pile. This is from my death pile. I think I've been saying that wrong all along, but okay, attic death pile. This is by CM Paula Soft and Sweet Notepad. Now, I put the word kawaii in there, K-A-W-A-I-I. That's a keyword that you want to use, and that's for this kind of cutesy, a little bit Japanese, a little bit Hawaiian. A lot of collectors love this kind of style. That's just a keyword, retro girl, so kawaii. It was a notepad from 1971, dated. In really good condition with lots of, each page had a different, not each page, but maybe every fifth page had a new drawing on there and saying, and so I made sure in the listing that I showed each one of those, not just the cover, and it's worth it to kind of do that. Sold for 20 bucks, just laying around in my attic death pile. A buyer was on for $27.03. Next, a pair of Polo Ralph Lauren shoes. These are sneakers. They were white and red canvas. I put trainers in there. I sold them as 9.5 size men's for $32. Guess what? Buyer got them. They were not men's. They were women's. I actually had tried them on, and I'm a little bit less than a 9, and I thought they were just slightly bigger, so I thought they were men's. They weren't. So they did get returned, and you'll see later in my what sold, they got resold pretty quickly. Next, these are 3 tonala, or that style of pottery from Mexico, tonala pottery, which I love to pick up if it's in really good condition. I got these on Facebook Marketplace, I would say about 5 or 6 months ago. It was during the time when I wasn't really listing, but I just happened to come across it. I was searching Facebook Marketplace for a lot of things for our home because we had moved. And I buy everything pretty much in this whole house secondhand. I just happened to see these, and I'm like, you know, they were local, 20 bucks, and there were 4 beautiful tonala plates. So I'm like, I'm gonna go pick those up. And it was definitely a good pickup because first I sold these 3. I lotted these 3 together because they had deer on them, and they sold for $34. Buyer was on for $57.26. And again, you'll see later that the 4th one did sell as well. Next, something from the death pile, and probably would not have picked this up lately. That's one thing about the death pile. There's some awesome things in there, and then there's some things, you know, that I probably didn't list them for a reason at the time. They just were not really the best pickups. This was one of them. This is a Reed women's zip around wallet, black and tan, in faux leather, not even real leather. So it sold for $10.99, and buyer was on for $19.10. Next, some Harley Davidson t-shirts. I lotted these together. I had a bunch of them that I had been picking up. They were all in the death pile. I lotted these 3 together, and they went for $25. And buyer was all in for $32.90. So, you know, I'm picky with Harley Davidson. Some of it sells well, some of it just sits and sits and sits. And so that's questionable. Next, I love to pick up cruise stuff. And when I buy cruise stuff, I don't just mean cruise wear clothing, but actual mementos of the cruise lines. People are sometimes looking for them. I know I was when we gifted the kids for Christmas a cruise. I went on eBay and was looking for, you know, some kind of, I think we gave cups and mugs. I gave a backpack by the cruise line that we were going on, which was Norwegian. And then we were able to wrap that up and have something to physically gift them. So there are lots of reasons why people do that. Some are just collecting, but this was just a little dinky Viking Cruise Lines, which is very expensive, those river cruises. And it was a genuine leather, upscale luxury bag tag, just one. And it sold for $9.99. Buyer was all in for $13.69. I don't usually like to sell things for very low prices like that, but you're going to see quite a few in here, and that's because, you know, I'm cleaning out the death pile. I'm trying to kickstart my business, and I also think the economy is such that we're going to see sales that you're going to want to do those kind of fast turnaround sales, which is very different marketing strategy than the long tail seller where you just buy things, let them sit. So I'm doing a little of both here, which isn't really what I'd always done in the past. Okay, death pile item. This was by Charmaine. This was a bone decor set in olive, a very large 6XL size, and I listed this for Renaissance fairs, steampunk, or cosplay. It was new without tags, and I have another one still listed with tags. Sold for $25, and buyer was on for $36.09. So any of that stuff that looks like it's could be Renaissance fair, corsets, and those kinds of things are definitely a pickup, as well as the plus size items. Next, aren't these guys so cute? They sat in my death pile forever. I just never listed them. I didn't get around to it. Luckily, I had done the research on them though, and I had saved it on my phone. So I went way, way back in my photos. It was like, you know, 2 years ago in my photos. I found it. So I knew that they were Boyd's Jumbo teddy bears. They were called Head Bean, and Head Bean is the style from, I think the beans have heads in them, and they're called the Head Bean plush. They were really large. Look at them on the bed. So I had 2 of them. I listed them separately. So this first one sold for $109.99. Wow. And that's because of the size. So don't sleep necessarily on all Boyd bears. You know, I wouldn't look at the tag and go, that's a Boyd bear, I'm not going to get it, because they don't sell well. In general, only special bears. This was so large that I would have picked it up regardless of the brand, in such wonderful condition. So the person who purchased it was really excited to get it. When she got it, she decided she wanted both. And so a couple weeks later, she bought the second one. Next, Nanette Lepore. I love Nanette Lepore. It doesn't always sell well quickly for me, but it's one of those wait and see items. So this is where the long tail seller comes in handy. I don't think, you know, young people necessarily, or people who aren't in the luxury market, really know Nanette Lepore. She's a high-end designer and has some wonderful stuff. It sells for a very high price. So it kind of tends to sit, but it is a really good pickup because it's very much quality clothing. So this was this dress. It was a wool, so that's a positive. It was a plaid jumper with a button front. It was only a size 2, so that isn't a drawback. Larger sizes sell better. But I did wait and wait and wait, but I got $38 for it. The buyer was all in for $48.23. Next, a vintage aluminum cake carrier, and this had this leaf acorn on it. The person emailed me and said she was so excited to get it because her stepmother had had one in the past and she wanted to have that same one. Apparently had brought cakes. So I love those personal stories when you hear from buyers about why they're purchasing a particular item. Sometimes they're just collectors. In this case, it was a very personal story, and I just love to hear those. Sold for $32 and 99 cents, and buyer was all in for $46.96. Now this buyer asked me to hold off on the shipping because she was going to be away, and I wrote back to her and I said, I really can't do that up until the last day. I have my shipping items on for a 2 to 3 day shipping. I think at that point it was 3 day. I've dropped it down to 2 day, but you really want to ship on time because you get dinged by eBay. So I explained that to her, and she was very kind about it. She really wanted this item, and she said she would ask her neighbor to watch out for it. So although I'd love to accommodate buyers, you have to be very careful with your shipping times. Next, these were in the death pile forever. These are Salvatore Ferragamos, and you might wonder, why did I leave them in my death pile? Why didn't I just list them? Because it's such a fantastic brand. There was no size on them, so the size might have either been rubbed off, it might have been on the box, but they weren't anywhere. And I mean, I'm telling you, I flipped that sandal upside down. These are mules made in Italy, a woven cotton. Guess what I did, guys? I used ChatGPT. I used AI. I put I took a photo, I laid out a measuring tape next to it, and I said, can you determine what size these are? It did it. And these have sold. The buyer's happy with them. They were the right size. They estimated they were 7.5B based on the size, and it measured it itself, the AI. I'm starting to say himself. Okay, deep breath. That's weird, but I'm going to do another video on how to use AI in the reselling world and what kind of tools you can use. I've been researching it a lot, specifically for academia, because of students turning in, you know, projects that are too much AI and that sort of stuff. It's a really big problem in the teaching world. And so I've also started researching it for reselling. So I'm going to do a whole nother video on how to use AI, how I use it, what it's good for, what it's not good for. And in this case, wow, it gave me a size. I sold those right away within like 4 or 5 days of listing them for $50, and the buyer was all in for $60.31. Now I do have the subscription AI. I paid $20 a month for it. You know, I use it for other things besides just relisting, but in that case, I just paid for my monthly fee. Death pile, amazing sale out of the death pile. These were these were a bag of, I paid $1.99 for all of these in a plastic baggie by Honey Hole Salvation Army. They were brass outlet covers, plate covers, doubles, and I was able to look up the type and the name. It was called Amarok Carriage House. It doesn't really matter so much, but they were vintage brass plate covers, $48.99. Buyer was all in for $62.23. So those kinds of home goods, hardware type things, if you see them, are possibly worth a pickup. Next, this is a fun sale because of the way I got this item. This is a little pink bag tote, vinyl mini shopper. It's glossy. It's still new with tags from Bloomingdale's. And I got this in trade. I never trade, but if you look back at my previous videos, you'll see there's one where I went to a Cure concert in the city, in New York City, which I'm about 3 hours from the city. And the buyer was, I had an extra ticket. So I had someone who couldn't go. So I had one extra ticket and I decided to put it up on eBay. I did. And the buyer said, hey, would you be interested in maybe doing a trade? I looked at her store. She had a fabulous store. And so I did. I put together a list of like 10 or 15 things. You know, it's a pretty expensive ticket. These days, concerts are not cheap. And she ended up sitting right next to me, which was kind of fun. So I got to talk to her, chat. She was awesome. And this was one of those items that I traded her for. It sold for $21 and the buyer was all in for $29.95. Next, this is not a common theme, but it's the second item that this happened to me too. So I really need to be careful when I'm kind of revamping my store. I sold this Looney Tunes puzzle for $24.99. Guess what? Could not find it. Again, it's somewhere in this move/death pile, was not carefully put away somewhere. It's up there somewhere in the death pile. I know it is, but it'll probably show up when we move and I'll have to relist it. But unfortunately, you know, those are the case where you risk getting negative feedback and you risk eBay dinging your account. So I'm really being careful now to only death pile list items that I know exactly where they are, because I don't want that to happen again. It's happened with 2 items in this April-May sale. Next death pile item. This is a Ralph Lauren maxi skirt, 100% cotton, really nice. It was a tiered dress in a great size of 12. I listed it as boho, nautical. Those might seem kind of different, but depending on how you style this, it could have gone either way. And for this, I pulled some pictures from not Instagram, from starts with a P, Pinterest. I pulled some Pinterest photos about how this could be sold and I put them up. So sometimes I'll bury other photos like that in the background. So it sold for $30 and the buyer was all in for $40.57. Great sale. Ralph Lauren, always look it up. Next, I sold something out of the death pile. These were jeans. I don't pick up a lot of jeans. I don't know a lot about them. I probably won't keep picking them. I don't really like them to list them. I know one reseller only does jeans and does great with it. But for me, not so much. These were a death pile item, CJ Black premium boot cut 30-32 medium wash, $28.95, so decent sale. Buyer was all in for $39.88. I did get all my death pile jeans listed though, so I was very proud of myself for that. Next, another book. This is called The Lodge Goat, and it's something from the Freemasons. So those fraternal organizations, just like religious stuff, I said were good books to look at. Anything that has to do with fraternal organizations, the Masons, the Elks, all of those groups, the KFC, take a look at them, see if they're going. So this sold for $50 and the buyer was on for $57.91. Next, an old recipe box. This was also death pile. This was a 1930s farmhouse kitchen. I put farmhouse in there because that was and still is a popular design style. It was gold medal flour recipe box, Betty Crocker, wood box, just the box, no recipes, no cards in it or anything. It sold for $14.99. Buyer was only for $25.75. Next, another Barbie item, and this was an actual Barbie piece. It has a number 1440, called the Pink Sparkle Sheath Dress. Sold for $15.19. Buyer was all in for $18.94. Next, these are kind of a funny sale. These are these double buckle ballet flat slip-ons. I love these shoes. I love them so much that I bought them for myself. I found my first pair at Marshall's, and they just had one color in red, and I loved them so much, and I got so many compliments on them that I was like, I'm gonna get some other colors, some more neutral colors that I can wear with other outfits. Red is red for shoes. You can wear them sometimes, but not all the time. So I bought them in brown, black, and white online. Marshall's only had that one pair. So when I got them, these were a different brand. Mine were Steve Madden. Well, they make this in the similar style and different brands, and this was kind of a no-name brand, and they didn't fit. So in Steve Madden, they fit. So now I had 3 pairs of these that I needed to relist. So I did. I sold one of them, these brown, and I sold them for $31.19, and I got $40.70 total. That's about what I paid for them. Next, this was an item that has been in my closet for a very long time, and I just had to lower the price. I had this really high, and it probably could have waited a little longer and sold it, but I'm in this mode of just wanting to get stuff out and going. This is a beautiful polo pony horse dress. It was made in Honolulu. Hawaiian dresses are great. Now, this is not a Hawaiian style dress, but it was made in Honolulu, and I sold it for $38.99. Buyer was all in for $48.78. Isn't it cool? I love it. A size small, so that's a ding against it, but it did sell when I lowered the price. Next, these are Stuart Weitzman sandals. These come from the death pile. I love to look at Stuart Weitzman. It's a very high-end brand. These sell for very expensive amounts of money. On the resale market, they are iffy, so you really need to be careful, but you know, I listed these at the right time. In summer, they're espadrille with a wedge platform and that woven cotton kind of wrap. They sold for $30. Buyer was all in for $41.62. Next, also a death pile item. This was actually in my linen closet downstairs. I thought I might use it sometime when we have guests or something. It was a Laura Ashley Cottage Rose comforter. It was a twin, so nothing huge, but it was in this really pretty pink and mint green floral. Sold for $59, and the buyer was all in for $83.74. Some of these higher end brands that sell bedding are definitely worth a look. Ralph Lauren, which I'm going to show you an awesome sale later, and Laura Ashley are 2 to definitely keep an eye out for. Next, this sale has been in my, this item has been in my death pile for a very long time. If you go back and look at my previous videos from about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago when we were in New Jersey, I was picking up some boxes from online from, I'm blanking on the name, why is that the case? Everybody was doing unboxings, and you get the packaging with the pretty dots on it. I'm gonna have to put it up here because I literally can't remember it. I started doing these unboxings where they're mystery boxes that you purchase, and these were this was for bags. You get 10 bags for, they were pretty expensive, you know, $120 or something. So I got 10 bags in this bag, in this box that I unboxed on camera, so you'll see me talking about it. I never really listed many of them. A lot of them, I'm not going to do this again. A lot of them needed much more repair than I wanted to do. I don't want projects. I just don't have time for projects. If you have time for projects and you're handy like that with certain items, you know, you can get some really good value out of it. This bag was ready to go to sell. This one didn't need a lot. It was a men's messenger bag, and it's in buffalo leather, so actual buffalo. It's Spikes and Sparrow. If you see one of these out in the wild, pick it up. You see how it looks sort of wrinkled and rumpy? That's because of the buffalo leather. It's supposed to look like that. So it's got that really distressed look, and they're very popular. They sell for a lot of money. This one just went for $35, but you know, I wanted to get it out there, and I took the offer. It was on offer for $35. The buyer paid $49.50. So keep your eye out for Spikes and Sparrow or buffalo leather items. Guys, this was in my death pile. I have some death pile items that went for high money, for good, really good profit. And, you know, you just wonder, why was it sitting there? I know why this was, because it needed to be steamed. It needed to be cleaned in order to photograph it. It was just a little bit more work. You know, it paid off. But this is a men's suit by Lubium of Italy. linen suit. Now, the brand is a really good brand. I definitely would keep my eye out for that menswear brand. But I think it also sold simply just because it's linen. So any linen men's jackets, men's pants, dress pants, and those kinds of things, keep your eye out for those because they will sell. This set sold for $150, and the buyer was all in for $174.84. So death pile item. Here's a not so great death pile item. This was a Nike Sport Tankini athletic top, racerback, $8.99. Wouldn't pick it up again. Sold for $8.99. Buyer all in for $14.17. We all know about those Nike tops. Good, not so good. Next is something that was in my store for forever. This was an early mistake. So a lot of us have, you know, when I moved, I've been selling for 25 years or more maybe, but I never really sold clothing until maybe 5 or 6 years ago, at least not in the volume that I do now. And this was just a mistake pickup. It was a Vera Wang. My honey hole used to sell items for 49 cents. So I got this for 49 cents. So for 49 cents into $8.99, I guess that's not bad. It's just not the model that I like to do. And it sat for such a long time. It was this watercolor dress, and it was sheer, but it was supposed to have a tunic dress underneath. And I didn't realize that when I purchased it, and it didn't. So that was explained in the listing. Buyer was all in for $14.98. Next was the next bear. So the buyer bought it when it was on 20% off sale. She paid $109 for the first one and then $87.20 for the second one. I felt really good about that because I probably would have made her an offer anyway if she bought both of them. She was all in for $112.77 on the second Boyd bear. Next, a Disney World Parks Space Mountain Tomorrowland t-shirt. Probably something I would not pick up again. This has been in my death pile, but I listed it. Sold for $15.19. It was an international sale going to Japan. The buyer was all in through the eBay system. Buyer was all in for $20.09. Next, a pair of shoes. This brand I love to pick up. This is a Taos brand, very expensive brand, comfort brand for the most part, sandals and those kinds of things. Size 10 medium. These were the Harvest multicolor strappy slip-ons. You can Google image these and usually get the style name if it's not right on there. Sold for $29. The buyer was all in for $41.50. Next, a Salumbra Safari sun protective shirt. So sometimes I'll pick up these sun protective shirts. Probably wouldn't have picked this one up again, but it was in my death pile and it sold for $21.59. Buyer was all in for $27.49. So I started running a 20% off sale in the beginning, in the mid-May, and so you'll see some weird prices on some of these items, and that's why. Next was this Loft Angora wool. I picked this up because of the Angora wool, not because it was Loft, but it sat for such a long time. This had been sitting in my closet. I just let it go for $10.99. And the buyer was all in for $20.31. Would not pick that up again. Next, this Eddie Bauer. It was new with tags. When it was new, it was $70. Black denim blazer in a women's XL casual workwear, sold for $20. Pulled it out of my death pile. Buyer was all in for $33.44. And she just I just got notice that she needs to return it. It just didn't fit. So I'm gonna relist that when it gets back. Next, another one of the Bloomingdale bags from my Cure concert. This one had the window display on the front, so not the plain pink, but a different look. These sold really quickly once I listed them, and it sold for $20, this one, and buyer was all in for $28.17. Next, a pair of Born knit shoes. These shoes were the weirdest thing because when I Google imaged them, they came up as Archipedico. Archipedico is a very expensive and good brand to pick up. It is it's what it sounds like, Pedico. It's a comfort brand for people who have issues with their feet and those kinds of things. So people who need those kinds of podiatry type shoes would pick this up. There was nothing in Born, but it was identical, also made in Portugal. The style was identical, the colors, everything. So I have to think that Born maybe was playing around with the idea of selling these or something. To not have one anywhere was just so bizarre. So I listed them as Born knit shoes, which is what they were, but then I also put Archipedico style because that I found was what buyers were going to be looking for. So Archipedico style, I probably is what sold them. They sold very quickly for $20.77. Buyer was all in for $32.55. Next, a pair of Urban Outfitters pants, $13.99. Would not sell these. Oh, you know what happened with those? Oh, that was a kid who said, oh, I banged on the desk and I thought someone was here. Hey guys, nobody, it was just me. It's all right, I might have to take a break. Those were a kid who, let me take a break, get them set. I'm going to cut it off a little quickly at the end because I thought I was going to keep going into the early June, but I ran out of time and I felt like I had too many sales. Hey, that's not a bad thing. And so I'll do another what sold for June coming up at the end of June. So wonderful to be back with all of you, and I hope you enjoy the what sold video.